Buffalo right now, I just don't know where that thing's going. I don't know what do you lean on other than just I'm going to throw the ball 150 times to Stephon Diggs every game. Like what else are you going to lean on? Because defensively, they're not even close to the same team. That's not their fault. It's injuries. It happens, and it happened to them this year. But like, you don't have Matt Milano, and you don't have Tre'Davious White, and you don't have Daquan Jones. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's over, but it's getting late early for Buffalo defensive. I mean, Mac Jones looked like Joe Montana in that game.
Yeah.
He just torched them. The Bills couldn't stop him. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't. I mean, they got some pressure, but anytime he had any modicum of comfort, he just sliced them and diced. I mean, he went 25 of 30 for 272 and 2 touchdowns. He killed him. He outplayed Josh Allen. It's not even arguable. More yards, 11 less attempts, no turnovers. Allen had 2. I mean, look, the other problem that the Bills have is their offense has no identity other than just, I've got to find Stephon Diggs. And if I don't do that, it's over. There's nowhere else to go with the ball. Kincaid played well yesterday. You could be happy about that. Dawson Knox has done nothing. Gabe Davis has some games he shows up. Gabe Davis has other games, just 1 catch for 6 yards like he did yesterday. There's nothing consistent about them. James Cook has been fine. It's a team that right now, they're not as good as Miami. I know they beat them. I know they beat them 48-20. I get all that. Right now, they're not as good. Now, they match up well with them. Grant them that. But like, they're not as good as them. They're not as good as Baltimore right now. They're not as good as Jacksonville right now. They're not even in the stratosphere Kansas City's in right now. They're not as good as these teams. Like, and I will also, I'll leave it at Allen is talked about, by me included, as a top 3 quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
Well, he's got to go be one because they're not winning if he's not. They don't have, like, the one thing Allen's had most of his career is a great defense. They're not going to have that this year. They're not against good teams. And they don't have a wealth of weapons on the team. Like, there have been some years they've been kind of devoid of weapons, and then they've had other years where, like, Cole Beasley was an all-pro, and they had Emmanuel Sanders. They don't have that with this team. Like, they don't. And he's going to have to go out there and be great, but do it in a way that is under control. It's one thing to put up a bunch of yards, but you take away from that when the first play of the game, you throw a mind-numbing pick in your own end of the field. Like, you can't do that. You don't have the team to overcome that this year. You know, in past years, maybe they would have just 3 and out of New England and got off the field. They're not doing that this year. So I still think the Bills are a playoff team, but right now, I don't think they're much more than that. I think they're a team that goes like 10-7 and somebody blasts them in the first round of the playoffs. They could improve. They could get better, but right now is where I think they are through 7 games.
Yeah, I went back and rewatched that game this morning. Mac Jones wasn't doing anything like incredible. It was the typical Patriots offense. The Bills just couldn't tackle anybody. They couldn't stop them after the receivers caught the ball, and it was a lot of yak. And Allen, like, the Bills' offense, man, like you pointed out, there's no rhyme or reason to do anything that they do. And there's no proof of concept. There is nothing that they're doing in terms of there's nothing innovative about it. And like, how much of that is that a Ken Dorsey problem? Like, what is this?
I think some of it's on Ken Dorsey. I also just think, though, at some point, and you know how I feel about like this with Herbert and the Chargers, because we talk all the time. At some point, bro, you're one of the best quarterbacks in football. Play like it. Like, stop with your turnovers. Just stop. Yeah. And it's, look, he only has one more pick than Mahomes does, than Tua does. But it's when he does it. It's how he does it. He cost them the first game of the year, flat out. Like, absolutely. It's inarguable. He flat out cost them that game. How important would that game be right now? Like, they'd be
leading the division right now if they won that game.
5-2. Yeah, they'd be in first place. You'd be sitting there going, all right, there's a hell in the NFL, man. I always tell people this. Take a baseball season and start it in mid-September. That's a football season. Like, one blown save over the course of 162 games, you don't even care. One blown save in a pennant race in the last half of September, you really care. Like, that was a blown save by Josh Allen. That game's over. And so to me, I look at that game and go, man, you can't do that. That can't happen. You know, I mean, it's not to say you can never have a bad game, but you can't have a 4-turnover game where you just cost them the game. You can't have games now where, look, the last 3 weeks, and they beat the Giants, Jacksonville, the Giants, and then this week against New England. Their offense has had 7 points going into the fourth quarter in each of these games. Like, you got to score points, man. Like, and so, and this was a game. If you watched it in New England game, I should you watched it earlier. I watched the whole thing live. He missed Diggs on multiple throws. He's wide open, and these balls are like behind him. He had a deep ball that should have been a walk-in touchdown. He overthrew him like 5 yards. It wasn't even close. Like, take a little off the throw and hit him with it. That's the kind of stuff that it's little in the context of a box score because it's just an incomplete pass. It changes the entire game. And in the end, they lose a game they never should have lost.
The last 6 games on their schedule: at the Eagles, at the Chiefs, home for the Cowboys, at the Chargers, home for the Patriots, at Miami. That's how they close out the year. Plus, they have a trip to Cincinnati before that as well. Like, it's not getting any easier, man.
No, I mean, they could easily go, even if they're playing well, 3-3 in that stretch in the last 6.
And hell, if they go 3-3 in that stretch, I mean,
you'd be happy.
You're escaping somewhat, so
you'd be happy. I really do think at some point, though, like the question I have with the Bills, long term, if they go 10-7 this year and they get beaten in the wild card round, but whoever, Baltimore, maybe they even see Miami again, maybe they see Jacksonville, maybe the Chiefs. If that happens, I know they just extended him a year ago. Do you bring McDermott back? Or do you start saying, look, man, I think we might have hit our ceiling with this team? Like, I don't know. Because here's the other problem. They're old in a lot of spots. Like,
especially on defense.
Especially on defense. But, man, they're getting to a point. So the Bills right now, they have the least amount of cap space in the league, which is only relevant because they basically aren't going to roll over anything into next year. All right? Next year, you go over the cap.com. The Bills are almost $20 million over the cap already for next season. And over the cap is projecting a salary cap increase of $32 million, which would be massive, like the biggest in NFL history. Yeah. So I'm going to bet, with all due respect to OTC here, I'm going to bet they're more like $30 million over the cap. And so you're sitting here looking at all these contracts. Like, I don't know where you go with this team. If this team doesn't work out this year, start looking at them and you pull up their kind of cap sheet, if you will, going forward. Well, guess what? Okay, Allen's locked in. You start looking at Gabe Davis, a free agent after this year. You're going to pay him?
No reason to bring him back.
I don't know. You're going to pay him? Like, I probably wouldn't. Like, Dawson Knox is getting paid $14.4 million next year. That's the first year of his 3-year extension.
That is absurd.
His extension hasn't kicked in, and you just drafted a first-round tight end. Dawson Knox is 100 yards receiving this year. Like, I don't know what you even do with that. You're stuck with that cap hit. Deion Dawkins, he'll be in the last year of his deal. He's going to be entering his 30s. Mitch Morse, last year his deal. Are those guys back next year? Do you cut them? I don't know. I mean, they're good players, but they're older. They're expensive. You probably keep them, but they're expensive. Daquan Jones, like, he's up for a free agent, a new contract next year. He's a free agent. Now, he was having a great year before he got hurt. Von Miller next year. His cap hit this year, $7.9 million. Next year, it's $23.8. Like,
Jesus.
You're paying him. You have nothing else to do with it. Jordan Phillips is a free agent. AJ Epinesa is playing really well. He's a free agent. Shaq Lawson, he's a free agent. You start looking down the line here, like, it's a problem. They got a lot of guys. Tre'Davious White next year is getting 16.6 against the cap. Like, I don't know. Is he back? Micah Hyde, he's done after this year. He's gone. Yeah. What do you do? You know, I mean, there's a lot of real problems.
Like, I'm pretty sure both Hyde and Poyer are both gone after this year, right?
Poyer's got one more year.
Okay.
But I just don't know. Like, if you're Buffalo and it doesn't work out, you're just going to do what exactly? Get a year older and roll this whole team over again? Yeah. I mean, it just feels like
especially in this year where, like, Ben Johnson's going to be a viable name. If you go if you live in that world where they go 10-7 and they lose in the wild card round, what would stop them from going out, hiring Ben Johnson, and trying something new? Because right now the Sean McDermott thing, I think you're right. I think it's kind of hit its ceiling right now. Do you think that they make a move at the deadline for like a Hunter Renfrow, Jerry Jeudy, Brian Burns?
What money do they have? I mean, they have no money. No, I don't think they're going to do that. They have no money. So it just look, the other problem they've had over the years, they've not drafted very well in the last handful of years.
Bill's Twitter will try to tell you that they have, but they haven't.
Well, Bill's Twitter needs to look at their draft chart the last 4 years. Who they drafted? I'd love for Bill's Twitter to answer that question. Who have you drafted?
They'll
Dawson
tell you how
Knox?
great Bookie Basham and AJ Epinesa are, like these.
And like, look, it's fine. I mean, all those guys are fine, but like the best guys, AJ Epinesa is having a good year, right? AJ Epinesa is playing better, and that's great. And kudos to him. Like, hey, man's found his stride. I like Rousseau. Okay, he's a good player. Rousseau has 3 sacks this year. I mean,
it's nothing special. Kyrie Elam, their first-round draft pick last year, doesn't dress.
He can't even get on the field, man. Like, he can't play. Dawson Knox has been, listen, I'm not saying he's not a good player, but like, you just drafted a first-round tight end. I mean, Gabe Davis was a great value pick. Like, is he getting a second contract? I don't know. You know, Ed Oliver, he was a top 10 pick. Ed Oliver's a good player, but you're not like, that's not what you want with a top 10 pick. You want a guy making Pro Bowls. You want a guy making all protein. He hasn't done that.
They paid him a ton of money too.
Yeah, they gave him a 4. Like, so I just look at this and it's like, where is this going? And this is why, by the way, all you need to know to dispel all that stuff about how they draft. Why do they keep signing all these older players back? Because they got nobody waiting in the wings to replace any of them.
Yep.
Like, that's why. And so
they're
you're
milking
stuck.
all of these guys to everything that they possibly can, just because they know what's behind them isn't going to be viable.
You're stuck if you're the Bills in this spiral of you can't let so and so walk, even though he's 32 years old, because there's nobody else there. And then they get hurt and they get injured and they start to fall off, and you're just kind of screwed. But I'm with you. Like, if this team doesn't play well this year, I know they extended McDermott. I'd start thinking about Ben Johnson. I'd start thinking about Lou Anarumo. I'd start thinking about like, who are some of these other guys? I don't know if Kellen Moore, maybe some of the luster's coming off his name in LA right now.
Yeah.
But he's been a guy people have thought of as a head coaching candidate. I mean, you got to start thinking about like, okay, where's this thing headed? Because it doesn't feel like it's headed in the right direction.